sorry about that. Ma just came home. And she doesn't really know what we're doing here with fantasy football. So here's the preview here. So we'll get into the first matchup. We already know the history behind it, right? We got Pantoni versus Pittman. Pantoni basically trying to hand the league over to Pittman. But then surprisingly making a big playoff run through these random pickups. Right now, projections have Pittman winning by 12 or 11.5 points, 11.3 points. But I don't know if they're quite Oh, no. Pittman's already made the move to take Cook out. Anyways, before we get ahead of ourselves, let's just take a look at each team. Pantoni with Joe Burrow there against a decently tough Baltimore defense. I don't really know how that's going to end up playing out, but your options are really pretty much limited here. It's not like you're going to start Ben Roethlisberger or something like that. On the other side, you got Pittman with Kyler Murray. I think Murray's going to kind of, is definitely got the edge on here. So I'm going to definitely pass that along over to Pittman. Taking a look at the running backs, this is where it got switched up a little bit today. You got Dalvin Cook came down with COVID. Honestly, I was kind of betting on Cook to being out for the rest of the year with all the the shoulder injuries, the domestic assault issues, all that stuff. Him getting his ass beat by women, all that stuff. So I thought Madison was going to be really good in other leagues for me, and so I had Adam there, but knew I wasn't going to get him from Pantoni. Anyways, Pantoni, got Madison in there. Last time Madison played, he didn't really do too well. He scored like maybe 8 points, 9 points. It's not what you're expecting, right? You got Madison and Jeff Wilson for Pantoni. Wilson is going to get the nod again over Elijah Mitchell, who apparently continues to be hurt. Very tough to tell what they do out there in San Fran. I feel like they're always switching up their running backs, whoever's the hot hand. But I think Jeff Wilson's got this one pretty much under control. Versus Aaron Jones and A.J. Dillon. Wow, Pittman, given the COVID designation, has to play both running backs for the Green Bay Packers. Don't know how that's gonna pan out. I know all like the waiver wire guys think that it's all right, but I mean, put it this way, I wouldn't do it. I'm going to give the nod to Pantoni at the running backs position based off the fact that he has 2 starters, and obviously Pittman can't have 2 starters at running back. Justin Jefferson and Gabriel Davis again. Pantoni trying to strike lightning trying to strike gold twice. There it is. With Justin Jefferson and Gabriel Davis versus Cooper Kupp, Davante Adams. I mean, it's where I feel you're going to get your pain point, Pantoni. Wide receivers are going to just be dominated by, Kupp and Adams. I think it's a no-brainer. Jefferson does have the potential to go off for a 25-plus, but, I mean, equally does Cooper Kupp and Davante Adams. So definitely nod to Pittman there. Look at the tight ends. This one's pretty easy. You got George Kittle versus C.J. Uzomah, or however the hell you pronounce his last name. Kittle's a target machine, reception machine, runs angry. It's only a matter of if he stays healthy or not through the entire fucking game, because if he wasn't such a badass on the field, I would have probably put him already on the all-glass team. The guy seemingly gets hurt at least 4 weeks every year. But when he's healthy, the guy's pretty much unstoppable. At the flex position, you had Justin Jackson for Pittman, who should get the starting nod with Eckler out. Eckler, who was also part of the Davante Adams trade to Pittman's team. Brutal look for Pittman. Imagine if he loses this week. That's going to be awful. You had it all set up for next year, and you blew it. Anyways, Marquise Brown, playing against Cincinnati, right? It's touchdown or bust, I think, for him. He did have 10 receptions, I think, last week, but do I see that happening again? Probably not. It'll be interesting to see. I'm assuming Lamar will end up playing, considering he was so close to playing last week. But we shall see. And, honestly, this preview could be moot just by the fact that, COVID could throw a wrench in everything. The whole fucking team could go down. Defenses and kickers, I'm not really going to get into that. I don't see much risk in either of them across the board. With that, This game's going to be really tough to predict. I think what it's really going to come down to is what Gabriel Davis does. And I know that's a ridiculous statement, but if he comes up and he gets 10 points, I think that's enough. Enough to kind of continue to keep Pantoni in the game. Against New England, it's possible. We'll probably try and shut down Diggs as much as we can. And with that, right, you're going to get a lot of target. I would expect more targets or pass attempts to Gabriel Davis. I think Pantoni's going to come up a little bit short. Man, this one's really tough for me. I think Pantoni's going to come up short by, call it like 5 points. So call it a 120 to 115, 115 to 110 type range. In favor of Pittman to move on to the finals, and kind of rightfully so. No one wants to see Pantoni in the finals, and just because of what he did to the league. And I know I'm probably a pot calling the kettle black on this, but it is what it is, right? I want to see the underdog, want to see a one-time winner get it. Moving on to the next matchup, we have the Battle of East Islip, right? We got Edemos and Pete. Pete striving to reach to the finals for the first time in what might be his entire fantasy career. With Edemos, who's been on a run on the back half of the fantasy season. Projections have Edemos losing by just under 6 points, and with that, we'll get right into the matchups. We have Justin Herbert on Edemos' team versus Lamar Jackson. I love Justin Herbert. Although he's playing Houston, you might get into gain script issue where you're not seeing the volume of passes that you want to have Justin Herbert. Lamar Jackson obviously can do a lot with his legs, but the question of if he's healthy or not could potentially limit his upside on the rushing side of things. I'm going to give the slight edge to Lamar Jackson, even though I do love Herbert. I think game script's going to be a big problem for him. Looking at the running backs, you have Mixon and Rojo. On Edemos' team, Rojo filling in for the injured Fournette, so he'll get the start. Versus Pete's Najee Harris and what the hell is Williams' name? Javon? Is it Javon? Yeah, Javonte. Close. Javonte Williams, who still shares the backfield a little bit with Melvin Gordon. It's a pretty interesting matchup. Najee hasn't been getting a lot of rushing. Hasn't hit like 100 yards rushing in a while, I think. Let's take a look. Where? I mean, he had 18 rushing yards last week. He had 94 rushing. He hasn't had 105. He hasn't had 100 or more yards rushing since Week 10 against Detroit. His play in the receiving game does bring his ceiling up or his floor up a little bit, but been somewhat inconsistent. Somewhat. Taking a look, just kind of gauging where I expect the games to go. I would see Najee Harris probably not running as much this week, so we got to hope that he's involved in the passing game. Joe Mixon and Rojo, I think that they're going to really benefit from the game plans that both of those teams have. Javonte Williams, he's very good. It's a shame that he still shares the backfield with Gordon. With that, I have to give a nod to Mixon and Rojo, just because of the floor of both of them starting with minimal competition versus Najee Harris' likelihood of not getting as many carries that we would expect because they're playing the Chiefs. Looking at wide receivers, you got Keenan Allen and Brandon Ayuk on Edemos' team versus T. Higgins and Deebo Samuel. Higgins has been wild. He's honestly over the past 5 to 6 weeks been better than Jamar Chase, which is a bummer for me. Deebo Samuel somehow always is good for at least 15 points. Very, very good pickup by Pete. I'm sure he didn't think it would be this good this year. Ayuk on Edemos' side, still not really fully up to speed. Keenan Allen. He's obviously doing Keenan Allen things. 100 yards, 100 receptions, 1,000 yards receiving. another check in the box for Keenan Allen. I will give the nod to T. Higgins and Deebo Samuel, aka Pete's team, at the wide receiving with the wide receivers. It just seems to make, historically they've been playing better over the past few weeks. Looking at the tight ends, you got Gronk and Ertz. Funny fact, last week Gronk had 11 targets. I don't know what the hell Tom Brady was doing, but 11 targets only resulted in 2 receptions. Target share is still there. That's promising for Gronk. As long as he's healthy, he's still a much better tight end than Zach Ertz, in my opinion. Even at their ages, I have no doubt there. So Gronk gets the nod from me there. And with that, Pete's team gets the tight end, wins the tight end battle. At the flex, you got David Montgomery, who, again, I said has been pretty much inconsistent, versus Waddle, who is really fighting with Parker now that he's returned for targets. Waddle against the Saints. I mean, the Saints really held down and showed up big with defense. I don't see. This one's going to be tough, right? They're playing the Saints. The Saints got a new quarterback they're throwing in there because Hill's got COVID. You got Montgomery. I'm going to have to give the edge to Montgomery because Seattle has been playing like shit, meaning the game probably won't get away from the Bears, which will point to a little bit more of a balanced attack on the offensive side of things. With that, I think Montgomery outpaces Jalen Waddle. And then you got your defenses and kickers. All in all, I think the real X factor is going to be what happens with Najee Harris, right? If he throws up another dud of under like 8 points, right, it really puts Edemos in a position to succeed. I'm going to end up giving the nod to Pete on this for him to move on to his first fantasy championship game, at least in our league. It'll be interesting to see. I'm anticipating probably another tightly contested matchup. I actually will think it'll end up being within the 3-point range. With that, I'm gonna say 110 for Peter and 107 for Edemos. All right, guys. See how this week turns out, and we will be back for next week's championship game and third place match. Have a good one, guys. Later.